Good evening, my horror friends, and welcome. Tonight we're going to try something a little bit different. Instead of the horror fiction, which as you all know I absolutely love, we're going to try something different and instead read some true horror stories themed around the deep, dark woods. Now, it's hopefully going to be part of a series which I'm going to do called Tales to Sleep To, and as such this video is designed to help you sleep a bit better. You will find at the end of this video an extra hour of rain sounds. Now if you like what you hear, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. But now I present to you Tales to Sleep To. Now, this isn't a scary story, but more of a creepy one. My friend's dad's family used to live in the woods near Eureka Springs, Arkansas. My friend's uncle was the oldest of the 3 kids and was allowed to explore the woods on his own, even though he was only about 9. One day, he came across a little cottage nestled in the woods. He knocked on the door and was greeted by 2 old ladies. He promptly asked for some water as he had been exploring for hours. The ladies invited him in and gave him milk and cookies and sat down and talked with him while he pet their white cat. They talked for a while and they eventually invited him to stay for dinner and spend the night because it was getting dark and he was a ways from home. Now, his parents were pretty used to him being in the woods for nights without coming back, so he accepted without question. He spent the night without incident and returned home the next morning. He visited many more times over the next year, and one day they told him that to bring his parents and brothers the next time that he came. So, the next week, the whole family embarked on the long trek to the cottage. When they arrived, however, they found the remains of a small cottage that appeared to have been abandoned for years. Everyone was very confused as they all trusted that my friend's uncle had visited the woman many times. They had absolutely no idea what had happened or if my friend's uncle had actually been visiting anybody. To make things even weirder, as they were leaving, an old, skinny, white cat ran past them, darting into the trees, leaving them in utter shock. I love to camp, but after my most recent trip, I don't think it will ever be the same. I set up my tent on nice, flat ground and collected some wood for a fire. The night came with all its nightly sounds, and I relaxed at the hooting owls and chirping crickets. Even better was the fact that no one else was around. Help! It was subtle. I almost missed it. The voice came from deep within the woods, and for a moment I did not believe what I was hearing. It sounded female, but oddly enough, I just could not tell. "Please, help," it continued. I shined my flashlight between the bushes and walked around. To be completely honest, even as a grown man, I was paralysed with fear. So, I did the responsible thing and called the local police. That's when things went from odd to very, very weird. The police told me to ignore it. I explained to them that someone could be injured and probably needed medical attention, but they assured me otherwise. When I kept pushing and asked why, they told me,
"Sir, if you ever hear that voice again, ignore it. Do not respond and do not approach."
Well, I did hear it again, but I did not ignore it. It was almost midnight when I heard the voice a second time. I awoke to someone whispering help, and it sounded like she was just outside of my tent. I went out to check, and no one was there, but the voice continued from a distance. "Help, please." Again, I grabbed my flashlight and looked around the area that I was camping. I was too afraid to follow the voice into the woods, especially since the authorities themselves avoided it. But I struggled morally, trying to decide whether I should go and help this person or listen to the police, who were concerned for my safety. But then I heard another, different voice. This other voice, which also seemed to be coming from the woods, was an octave lower. Unlike the first one, which cried for help, this one was loud and demanding.
"Quiet,"
the other voice demanded.
"No one's going to help you."
Once I heard that, I was sure someone was in trouble. I called the police again. When I informed them about a second voice coming from the woods, they seemed even more concerned. They told me that I should pack my things and leave the campsite immediately. They said that hearing the second, more manly voice meant that it was getting desperate. They also said that the two voices were coming from the same person. That part was bizarre and confused me, to say the least. It was at this point I dismissed the police in that area as crazy, but not before telling them off. I got angry. I told them that if they did not get down here to come and check it out, then I would do it myself. I said repeatedly that a woman could be in serious trouble and that it was their duty to help her, but they still refused to come. All they kept repeating to me over the phone was,
"Do not enter the woods, sir."
They seemed more afraid than I was. Once I hung up the phone, I heard the voice again. A gentle, "Please, somebody help me." And then a growling,
"Quiet. No one's coming."
It was a little past midnight at that point. I couldn't live with myself, knowing that I had the chance to save someone's life, but instead cowered. So, I grabbed some things and ventured into the woods. When I entered the woods, the voices ceased. Just like that. No cries, no whispers, and no commands. Even the owls and crickets went away. Nothing but dancing leaves and creaking tree branches. I stopped walking and looked around. A full 360 degrees. "Hello? Anyone here?" I called out. Nothing. "I'm here to help," I continued. "Where are you? Are you okay?" Still nothing. I thought of calling the police again, then chuckled to myself. I found it strange but somewhat comforting that I did not find anyone out there. Nonetheless, I was still creeped out, so I packed my things and finally left the campsite. I did not know why the police, of all people, were so afraid. Worst case, someone was in actual danger and we all found them. Best case, morons who think saying "help me" in the middle of nowhere is a great idea for a prank. To be honest, when I heard the voice the very first time, I did think it was a joke. When I heard it the second time, along with that other voice, I became a bit more concerned. And same with the third time I heard it in the woods. But when I heard it again, a fourth time, a week after I left the campsite, coming from inside my own house, I became very, very concerned. I've never been that active, but recently, after a health scare, I've decided to get in shape. The gym is boring, so I've started running down trails in the woods. Narrow paths winding next to a babbling brook, birds chirping in the trees, the smell of dirt and fresh air, it's exhilarating. But today, that all came to an end. I was taking a jog down a new path I hadn't been down before. As I came around the bend, my toe caught on something. I flew through the air and fell into the dirt, my hands flying out in front of me a second before I hit the ground. Pain shot up my elbows and knees. Wincing, I slowly pulled myself up. And there it was, the thing that I tripped on. A piece of clothing. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a denim jacket, twisted and rolled in on itself. The indigo blue, now a muddy brown, as it was slowly reclaimed by nature. Now, it really wasn't the weirdest thing I'd found in the woods. By far. I'd seen beer bottles, crumpled paper, even an old baseball cap. I straightened, glancing around the forest, and something else caught my eye. Just several yards off the trail, there was something white sticking out against the muted greens and browns of the forest. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I stepped off the trail. Ferns brushed my calves as I made my way through the underbrush. I winced at the thought of how many ticks were probably latching onto my legs, but I continued. As I got closer, and my brain still couldn't pass what the white shape was, I just knew by the colour, by the shape, it did not belong in the woods. I took another step and froze. Next to the shape was a mess of tangled, dark hair. Oh my God, it's a body. I began to scream. No one could hear me. I was a few miles from the road, from any houses, but I couldn't help it. I screamed and screamed and screamed until I was out of breath. The woman was lying face down in the underbrush. The ferns and long grasses had grown up around of her, nearly engulfing her entire body. There was no smell. She had probably been here a while. And the white that I'd seen, it was the white of her t-shirt poking up through the foliage. Oh my God, what do I do? My hyperventilating breaths echoed in the empty clearing. Call the police. Right. I pulled out my phone. I stopped. A few feet away from the body, lying in the tall grass, was a shoe. I took a step in its direction, and my entire body seized up as it came into full view. It's my shoe. It was identical. A pink Nike sneaker with white laces and a silver swoop logo. I swallowed, but my throat was dry. It's a popular sneaker, so this woman wore them, so what? Doesn't mean anything. Except I turned back to the body. The woman had long, dark, wavy hair. She was wearing black leggings and a white t-shirt, like I often wore, like I was wearing right now. The ground spun underneath me. Just a coincidence. Just a coincidence. But I had to know. Slowly, I crouched down. I grabbed a stick near my foot and raised it to the woman's neck. Nearly gagging, I carefully lifted a lock of hair to expose the grey, desiccated skin of the woman's neck. No. A faded tattoo of a cross stared back at me. She has my tattoo. She has my tattoo. I leapt back. My heel hit uneven ground and I lost my balance. I fell, rear first, onto the damp dirt, staring at the corpse, at the tangled mess of hair. It can't. It can't. I forced myself up, tore my eyes away, and sprinted back through the ferns, back to the trail. I ran as fast as I could, my entire body burning. My lungs ached with each breath, but all that I could think about was running, getting away from the body. When I turned the bend, I saw a man walking down the trail, earbuds in, getting exercise. I thought about telling him what I'd seen, but I could not stop the panic, could not stop running, putting as much distance between me and that thing as possible. But then, the strangest thing happened. In that last split second, before I passed the man, I saw him smile. What the... I pumped my legs harder, glanced back again. No. He had turned around and was staring at me. Panic flooded me. I forced myself to run harder, but I could hear his steps behind me, pounding on the dirt trail, getting louder by the second. The body in the woods flashed through my head, face down, overgrown with foliage, sunken and grey, forgotten. I glanced behind me. He was running at me, but not gaining on me as fast as I thought. I forced myself to push forward, around another bend, and then through an opening in the trees. I saw it. The parking lot. And it wasn't empty. A family was getting ready to take a walk on the trail, and they could see us. "Help!" I screamed. "Help me!" A flurry of movements as the father pulled out his phone and called the police, while the mother ushered the kids back inside the car. I glanced back to see the man scurrying off into the underbrush, trying to hide. But it was too late for him. The police identified the man as a local who'd been accused of stalking women before. They were able to find him in the woods and bring him into custody. But they did not find a body. I revisited the spot several weeks later, and while I was certain that was the exact spot, there was no body, just the ferns swaying in the breeze, dappled by early summer sunlight. The bad place. That's what the locals in my small town call the woods that circle our little slice of paradise. There are many different rumours that the residents murmur about to each other, but I don't think anybody really knows what waits in those woods. Devil cults, child-eating witches, creatures from beyond, and even aliens are some of the theories that float about. I mean, they're all bull if you ask me, but what isn't is those woods have definitely earned their nickname, the bad place. Hikers have entered and have never come out. Kids have dared each other to enter and vanished. Dogs and cats have run off into the woods just to never be seen again. If you stick to town, you're safe. The only rule is don't go too deep into the bad place, or you'll just become another statistic. I live in a small house just on the outskirts of town. There's an entry to the bad place about 100 feet from my front doorstep. At night, I keep my door locked and shotgun by my side, ready to fire at anything that comes from those woods. Nothing ever has, except for sounds. Horrible sounds. The sounds of children screaming and crying out for help. I think it's the trees. Once the woods have you, they become you and can even communicate with you. Well, that's just speculation, but it's the only thing that makes sense. Their cries nearly tricked me the first time that I heard them. I've told the local sheriff and his deputy, but it always falls on deaf ears. They're just as terrified as the rest of us. Who can blame them? Bo, my 6-year-old chocolate lab, sleeps in my room every night. He whimpers when the wind blows at night. I'll never forget my journey into the bad place. The night Bo got out and chased after a monstrous buck into the woods. Now this wasn't a regular looking buck either. He had red, beady eyes with torn up flesh hanging from his body and crooked antlers that were broken in half and dangled loosely. I grabbed my shotgun, flashlight, and started towards the bad place. I moved as quickly as I could. It still surprises me today that I wasn't more reluctant at the time. The wind became cold as I progressed deeper into the woods. The trees grew closer together and the woods began to swallow me. A sinking feeling filled the pit of my stomach. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum. I was terrified, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't call out Bo's name. My throat tightened more and more every time I tried. I managed to cry out to the woods, and they answered me. The dense trees suddenly started to open and spread apart from one another like a crowd allowing someone to pass. The wind quickly ceased. It was quiet. The woods had become eerily still. There were no signs of Bo anywhere. I looked in every direction, and then a whimper. I followed the whimpering to a pile of tree limbs. Bo was lying near it. A strong gust of wind blew, knocking me to the ground. I gasped as I landed on my back. The wind entered me and filled me. Bo and I ran back to our little cabin. I never spoke a word about going into the woods because I fear how people would have reacted. For the first few months, things were normal. And then it all started. The nightmares, the visions, and the transformation. My nightmares started to become extremely vivid They varied in context, but all had a similar ending. It always ended with the woods taking me back. The visions became increasingly horrifying with each passing day. It went from children crying to seeing their dead, mutilated bodies wrapped in tree vines. They stalked me wherever I went. It got so bad I had to move from my cabin to an apartment in a bigger city. I can still hear the woods calling me back. The trees, they whisper my name, and the wind blows for me. The bad place is in complete control now. I can feel it in my heart. I know it in my mind. There's something growing inside of me. I can feel it moving in my stomach. The pain is shooting to the rest of my body. My skin has started to dry up and become a wood-like texture, flaking off in good-sized pieces. Maybe I should go back. Maybe I should give it what it wants. Me. Throughout the days, we take our 2 dogs outside to their kennels so they can get out of the house for a while and run and play and such. These are not small dogs. One is a black lab husky mix and the other one is a full-blooded Staffordshire Terrier. The kennels are placed at the edge of the yard near the woods. These woods are big, large enough to take a day or 2 to go hiking through. Lately, when it gets dark, the dogs seem on edge. They will bark and whine toward the house to come in. At first I figured they just wanted to get back into the house, but now I'm thinking they're actually scared. 3 nights ago, when I went to get them, it was already dark. But we have a security light, so it isn't pitch black or anything. I got to the front of the first kennel and noticed both dogs were being quiet. They always bark at me excitedly when I go to get them, but they were dead silent. This weirded me out a little, but not to the point of being scared. I will admit, there was a certain uneasiness in the air, something I can't explain, but it sort of felt electric, like I was about to be shocked. The longer I was there, the more uneasy I felt. I started getting the first dog, the lab, out and heard a heavy snap in the woods near the kennels. I froze. The dogs froze. By this time, I was so on edge that if someone had spoken, I would have jumped, screamed, and possibly ran. The creepy feeling in the air just kept getting thicker. The lab had her bushy tail stuffed underneath her and was whining. This did not make me feel any better. The pit bull was as far away from the woods as she could get, whimpering for me to come and get her. I can only take one dog in at a time because they get too excited and will sometimes try to fight. So I avoid that at all costs. I felt so bad leaving the pitty there by herself, but I had to do it. As I walked away, she barked this high-pitched whining type of bark at me that I have never heard her do before. The lab could not get to the house quick enough. I went back for the other one and dreaded every step, as her door is right at the base of the woods. I would have to turn my back to the woods to open her door and get her out. The air felt heavy and stale, with an unpleasant smell, like a dead skunk, as I approached the kennel. Another snap, and I was about ready to run for it, but I did not want to leave my dog, who had her head down defensively, facing the woods. I could barely make it. To be honest, it felt like trying to walk through water. I was terrified by the time I reached the door. I heard heavy breathing behind me as I got my dog out. She was scared too, but started growling behind me. I was frozen in place. The breathing continued for a minute before I heard steps coming toward us. We both took off at the same time. A terrifying scream came out of the base of the woods. I did not dare look back. I just ran. My pity pulled me all the way back to the house. I got in, flipped off all the lights, and stared out of the window towards the woods. I could see something moving slightly, but just out of the light. It moved back and forth for about 5 minutes, then disappeared. It took me forever to fall asleep that night because I was so scared that every little noise freaked me out. The next night, I went to get the dogs earlier, right around dusk. I thought all was good until I was getting my pity out. A huge snapping sound, like a tree branch had just been snapped in half, rang out. Now it sounded pretty far away, so I just hurriedly got my dog and started towards the house. A few steps away from the kennel, I heard something big start charging toward me from inside of the woods. We ran again, and it appeared to follow for so long. Then it retreated back. Now, every night since then, I hear sounds coming out of the woods, like branches breaking and being thrown around, knocking on trees and roaring. I am absolutely terrified. I no longer even take my dogs down. I just take them for walks during the day and make sure we're all in before dusk. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about buying a gun, but I'm not sure it will help.